Hello guys. Now today I wanted to have a little, well, go over a few things in Formula 1. Now, as you might have noticed, my channel is full of racing games. I do some onboard shots of me driving rally cars and in virtual world, of course. So yeah, I'm a long time fan of sport, and motorsport was sort of always one of my favourite sports. The reason being because close racing, such as MotoGP, is very entertaining, and I always liked watching a good shunt. As long as the driver was not seriously hurt, I think there's nothing wrong with a good shunt. Now, F1 was never really a brilliant spectator sport. Traditionally, motorbikes and saloon cars tend to produce more close and exciting racing, partly because, of course, the F1 cars are pretty fragile. You can't wheel bang or panel bash so much, because you're gonna end up with a broken car. Although, what I would say is, when F1 did have an exciting race, usually if rain came down and played a factor, it would be great. If every F1 race could be like Interlagos in the 2000s, when that Fisichella won in a wet race, or the Spa race in '98 with all those cars on carnage, and then they had to restart, and the restart produced a really exciting race. You might remember Schumacher going into the back of Coulthard, and he thought Coulthard had done a bit of a stoppie in front of him. Could have done, who knows, but everyone remembers stuff like that, those races. What great races, how dramatic they were. And not just for shunts. The racing was close, they were right on the ragged edge, etc. Now, in my mind, F1 took a step forward in finally getting rid of the groove tyres, because the groove tyres were lame, and I don't really think they stopped the cars from being quick. Maybe on corners, but on the straight, not so much. Now, when they got rid of those, we had slicks. Schumacher was at Mercedes. He made a comeback. Those 2 or 3 years were brilliant. The cars were all sort of roughly fairly even. Mercedes weren't miles out in front. Although, actually Red Bull did have a large advantage, but there was quite a lot of good racing in those years. I remember Vettel would have his fights on track and off track with Mark Webber, his teammate. Now, since 2014, they brought in a load of draconian rules. So basically, you can't do anything. You have to be bland, boring, little procession. And if someone overtakes, penalty, grid penalties, penalty for this, penalty for that. Right? Is that what a spectator wants to watch? A million different little penalties for doing anything or everything. It's ridiculous. And recently, they've really taken the biscuit this year. They've made the halo compulsory, and it's really gay. I really don't like it. I've just been watching some onboard shots of Australia qualifying, and my god, the camera onboard looks awful. It used to be a highlight to watch onboard footage. Now you want to watch the cameras at the side, The onboard shots, wow, what a mess. Um, and another thing is that the Halo has been forced through by certain people that I don't know, are they ever named? Probably not. Someone in the FIA. And they never asked the fans, they never sort of did a democratic process. Some jerk at the top with money and his yes men underneath him have forced this on everybody, fans and drivers, because, look at Kevin Magnussen, at least he's honest. There's also a video of Alonso saying, oh yes, it's great, it's safety, and he's talking about his colleagues. Sorry, Fernando, but you've only been in F1 since 2000 and something. I think 2001 might have been his first year in the Minardi. So, I don't know what he's talking about there. Now, a lot of these pro Halo people are really just supporting this because they're left-wing, die-hard, health and safety cretins. And some of them are actually being paid quite a lot to push nonsense like this through. The FIA, the governing body, if you search, the FIA has been thinking about a so-called Halo since 2016, but there's no mention of any names, any individuals, so presumably everyone in the FIA was complicit. God knows, we have to figure it out for ourselves. I guess no one wanted to take the accolade of having introduced it. So anyway, a lot of these pro Halo cretins who are not even real F1 fans, they're just social engineers, such as Chain Bear F1. I mean, really, if they look at Justin Wilson's accident, the reason that the debris came back across the track is because it was an oval. There's no ovals in F1. F1 has a minimum runoff space. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it's definitely more than that. Justin Wilson was killed at an oval. There was zero runoff space, and the debris flew back into the road behind it. If we were talking an F1 track on a corner, the debris would have gone straight on into the gravel. Even if it hit the fence, it's not going to bounce back onto the track because the gravel pits in F1, they're pretty decent size. Also, Henry Surtees, again, this guy was killed not in F1, it was in a different formula, at Brands Hatch, at Clearways, where there was, again, a little bit more, maybe 5-10 meters runoff. I wouldn't say 10, I would say about 6 max, 6 meters. Hit a tyre barrier or a fence and came back into the track, a wheel that was. Now, I don't celebrate these things. Henry Surtees' death was very sad, and so was Justin Wilson. As a fan of the sport, I'm aware that both of them were very good drivers, and from what I've heard, nice people. I always quite liked Justin Wilson. He was always a modest lad. In fact, he actually beat Mark Webber in the Formula 3000 prior to them moving up to F1. So just shows you I'm not a fake fan. I actually can remember these things off the top of my head. And also, Mark Webber was given the drive maybe because he was a bit more PR friendly. He was better looking and not as gangly and awkward, because Wilson was quite a sort of lanky looking chap. But he had beaten Webber on track that year. Sadly never made it in F1. Did well in Indy cars, and it was a tragedy when that nose cone took Wilson's life. But as I said, different context to F1. And even like Jules Bianchi, I don't think Halo would have helped there. Um, it was the space where the driver's head sticks out that got rammed backwards, so the Halo would have gone backwards with it, in my view. And also, the spring into Mass's helmet doesn't necessarily mean that it would have happened. With a Halo, it could have gone through the gaps. There's quite a few gaps in the Halo. In fact, it could arguably collect debris, whereas the debris would perhaps bounce off the helmet or such and such. These helmets are not $10 helmets. They're very strong. Massa was injured because the spring that hit was very, very quite heavy and moving quite fast. But you'd be surprised, actually, in shunts, a lot of flying sort of shrapnel, like carbon fibre, will just go straight off the helmet. They are designed to protect you from death. Bianchi would have died because he was heading headfirst into a digger. He hit the underside of the digger. There was not enough room. A Halo may have helped keep him alive, possibly, but chances are he would have been killed anyway. I don't think the Halo is actually a reaction to this sort of thing. It's more health and safety, and it's the same sort of left-wing elements within the government. They want this equality, this sort of Marxist, we're all the same type rubbish. Why? Well, it's not safe. Why don't they just put robots in the cars, or why don't they just put Formula One via R Factor online? People don't watch the sport because it's like their religion. They watch it for entertainment, and you're taking the entertainment out of it, and it sucks. Some other factors, as I mentioned just before I finish this rant. I don't think it's a rant. I think I've stayed calm throughout. But the grid girls, no need to get rid of them, was there really? The engines, they used to have the trademark screeching engines. Honestly, if you're at a track, say if you're at Silverstone or whatever, and you're a fan, and the race isn't very good, at least you've got those those loud engines. Just you can feel the vibration out of them, and that's a spectacle. And it's another one that some old fuddy-duddies have decided is not necessary. Well, honestly, I've given up on F1. I couldn't really care less what happens, and good luck to those who stay on, because to be honest, the people who support it are now just supporting it for its politics, which is pathetic. And I think you'll probably see a few empty seats throughout the course of this year, unless they start giving tickets away for cut price, or maybe even free. I don't know, because I certainly wouldn't go to a track to watch the new F1. It's an absolute shambles. It's been bad for 4 or 5 years, and honestly, the grid girl and the Halo thing is the final nail in the coffin. As I said, in 2012, around that time when they got rid of the groove tyres, things were actually looking up, but they still had a few things that they should have done to make the racing a bit more, a bit closer. And by that I don't mean success ballast. I hate success ballast, but just design the cars so that they can race closer. But rather than actually look at how they can make the sport more entertaining, they've just looked at what silly politics they can bring in to nanny everybody. So yeah, sayonara F1. I won't be watching. I'll be enjoying MotoGP. Thank you. Goodbye.